This is Akashvani. In the program Insights, now we bring you a discussion on G-20 Conference on Crime and Security. The participants are Jiten Kumar Jain, cyber security expert, and Prasoon Srivastav, journalist.
Today, India, as part of its G20 presidency, is hosting a conference on cybercrime at Gurugram in Haryana, where our Home Minister gave a speech this morning that cyber threats are to be fought by the world and it is a common goal to achieve cybersecurity. Mr. Jain, how do you see this cyber threats and what is the relevance of this G20 Cybersecurity Summit?
See, we are looking in an era where countries are utilizing their economic infrastructure and financial infrastructure at a rapid scale to transform the entire societies, to leapfrog their economies. And if you see developing countries like India, South Africa, we have made a huge progress in the way we make financial payments, in the way we do transactions. Today, almost 70 to 80% transactions of our economy is online using UPI, sometimes Aadhaar-enabled payments. And there is a common threat which is evolving on this digital public infrastructure, what we have created. Threats of cybercrime, threats of hackers, sometimes state-sponsored, hackers which are targeting these institutions, sometimes international groups which target institutions for profits and economic gains. Now, in this situation, tackling cybercrime has become very, very critical. And there are three fundamental problems which India and many other countries have been facing in these rising cybercrime challenges. One, there is no global treaty on cyber today. Not forget about cybercrime, even on cyber espionage or cyber threats or emerging threat of cyber war. Many countries like US, UK, and Europe have gone on to declare that a cyber attack on their country might be met with a nuclear response, might be met with a conventional response. So they have gone that far. But when it comes to tackling the crime, there is no common definition of cybercrime. There is no common treaty to tackle cybercrime. Second, even if you are able to track an individual or track a group or an entity or a state which is carrying out financial frauds or financial crimes or cyber attacks, it is very, very difficult to attribute to a specific state. It is very, very difficult, even if you attribute, to prosecute because countries do not cooperate. In this entire pretext and context, Union Home Minister, and today, since India is also has the presidency of G20, in the G20 meet on AI, metaverse, he said that, look, today fighting cybercrime is a common goal. So if we cannot enter into a global arrangement, at least we should be able to get into a multilateral G20 arrangement. And that was a theme and motive. And I think it is a welcome step by the Union Home Minister, where India is taking the lead to ensure that developing countries and developed countries come together to fight cybercrime.
So there are two things to it. Like if you see there's cybersecurity issue at international level, and then there is cybersecurity issue at domestic level. How do you see India is prepared to tackle the challenge of cybersecurity when we are seeing this leading lot of digitalization happening? A lot of people are using digital means to conduct their financial transactions, their Beam, UPI, Google Pay, and all those things have come up.
So if you see internationally, India has always been a target of our hostile neighbors. And I can fearlessly name them both China and Pakistan, which has been targeting our digital public infrastructure, which has been targeting our government institutions, which have been targeting our defense institutions. And it is even, and many times we have seen that we have been able to attacks to a specific country, but there is no further action because these companies do not even cooperate. If you look at internationally, you can expect some sort of cooperation from democracies, law-abiding countries like Europe and West. But since we are facing hostile challenges from both sides of our borders, I think it is very, very important for us to find like-minded allies to enter some sort of multilateral mechanism to investigate cyber attacks, share threat intelligence, share cybercrime feeds which are coming in, to ensure that we at least have some common denominators and common understandings of cyber safety standards. And when it comes to domestically, it is linked to our global posture because see, today India in last 7 years has been able to give digital identity to 90% of our population. More than 1 billion people have got Aadhaar card today. We have enabled entire financial infrastructure on Aadhaar stack. You are able to make UPI payments because of Aadhaar linked bank accounts. You are able to distribute COVID certificates because of digital identity like Aadhaar, which is online. You are able to do entire public services delivery online because of India stack. So when government of India has been investing so heavily in digital public infrastructure for common good, enabling private sector for innovation, it is the duty of the government to defend those public infrastructure, defend the interests of private sector, at the same time the interests of public. Now, you would very well know that 40 crore people were onboarded to Jan Dhan accounts. These are people who are standing on the last leg of society. these are the people who are most targeted in terms of cyber frauds, the small financial frauds, which are sometimes 3,000 rupees, 4,000 rupees. These people have got no relief from the local thanas. These people have got no relief to the grievance redressal mechanism. The banks have not come to help them. Police is not cooperating. And what in turn happens is that these people lose trust in the digital ecosystem. So it is very, very essential and critical for the government to retain the trust of these people in the digital ecosystems of our country. And that is why tackling cybercrime is an urgent priority. And to tackle that cybercrime, because many of the times actors or they're hosting their servers are based in foreign countries, it is very, very important to have some sort of collaborative mechanism with the foreign countries. So that is why I think our global posture in cybersecurity and our domestic security policies and postures and platforms are linked together.
You've touched upon a lot of things like international arena. You have named China and Pakistan. And then you've talked about that last mile people now are connecting to the digital world. And if they don't get proper security, there'll be distrust towards the digital technology, which is also very essential to meet the SDG goals set by UN. But
Yeah.
if we begin from your first point of China and Pakistan, China is also part of G20. So do you think that the efforts that India is to make a global framework for cybersecurity, will it be effective in presence of China?
Personally, I'm not very hopeful. I feel that if not all G20 countries, a group of other countries, if not through G20 platform, might enter into other different multilateral mechanism. But I think G20 gives a very good platform to bring forth the challenges, concerns. It also exposes many countries who are not willing to cooperate. And it also appraises countries who are willing to cooperate. So I think it is almost like SARC, which failed only because of Pakistan, while all other countries and many others who were the observers got into a separate, multilateral arrangement called BIMSTEC. So I think same might happen on cyber. G20 might be a platform to raise the issues. It might be a platform to discuss, but the arrangement to tackle the cyber crimes, global multilateral treaty might be on a different platform. That's number one. Second, you can take a horse to a pond, but you can't make him drink water. I think government of India over the past 8 years have been given enormous budget for the police modernization, both through BPR&D and both through ICPO scheme, India Cyber Coordination Center scheme. And the states have, on their credit, have also opened cybercrime police stations in many districts. But the problem here is that merely opening buildings and naming them cyber police stations do not help. There is a huge lack on the part of states in the capacity generation, reskilling of our cyber police forces, modernizing the technical infrastructure for the police, and creating highly skilled investigators. So I think those challenges on the state government's parts have not been met. And India, despite of all the support from the central government, despite of availability of budget and technology, remained a lame duck cybersecurity country.
So I'll go one by one. I'll take the international part first, where you mentioned again that there's some kind of doubt in your mind with China being a part of G20 and all the efforts around cybersecurity. Can there be some kind of international pressure on China to discourage the anti-social, the cybercrime activities in the global arena? And can we have some kind of treaty with them for getting to the bottom of the cause of whatsoever
See,
cyber
the
fraud happens?
Communist Party of China, this is a very interesting issue. I mean, Communist Party of China, if you read the biographies of many of the Chinese scholars, it is evidently clear that Chinese Community Party has a singular belief that you can make them sign on any paper, which they will throw it into the dustbin and they will never follow. So all our arrangements on China for the border security issues are also thrown into dustbin. So I think China entering into a treaty is not important. The point is that will they honor it? So I think the world across, especially in the Western countries and European countries, have followed of this approach of naming and shaming China. I think this is what we also need to follow. First, we need to warn them. Then we need to pressurize them. But if it doesn't work, we should name them and shame them. Same for Pakistan. The ISPR, the Multi Inter-Services Public Relations, which is known as from last 7-8 years. This defense agency of Pakistan has been completely engaging in information warfare in India to create a religious divide, target Indian institutions, target Indian economics. They have been targeting our strategic sectors, especially in the financial sector, edtech sectors. They have been naming and defaming our companies. They have been running defamatory campaigns against our corporates. We have somehow not figured out the way to name and shame these countries. Very recently, we have seen, the oil sector companies have been targeted. EdTech sector companies have been targeted by ISPR, by, projecting them in poor financial health. We have seen the new startups, which have come in private financial sector and technology sector, have been targeted by them. So I think the only approach or the only method to deal with these hostile countries, which have used terror and information warfare as a state tool for their foreign diplomacy, is to name them and shame them. The cooperating with them, I think, is only a dream and a work on paper.
So this should be taken up at the UN level, at the global level, and G20 efforts will not suffice to build that global framework. Correct me if I'm
I
wrong,
think
if I interpret it this way.
absolutely. I think G20 can be a platform to bring forth the investigative knowledge or the reports on these countries and force them to take action. but you must not expect that they will take any action. These are the best platforms to discuss and expose this country and the conduct of these countries on different issues.
We also have had some bilateral agreements between India and US and some other countries. How helpful are those agreements in case of to prevent cyber crimes?
I think it's very important because if you look historically, ever since the evolution of internet in DARPA lab, in last 20 years, today 70 to 80% of the hosting service providers and the domain registrars are based out of US and Europe. And these are the countries which are law-abiding countries. These are democracies which have got common interests and common goals.
And now we come to the domestic part of it. Government has created a portal cybercrime.gov.in, which you can use in case of there's any cyber incident that you have faced or there's any kind of financial fraud that you have come across. How helpful is this portal cybercrime.gov.in?
See, if you practically see the cybercrime.gov.in, the portal which was launched 2 to 3 years ago, and the 1930 helpline to report cybercrimes, they were wonderful initiatives. And three things. A, they cut down the red tapeism of local thanas not able to filing FIRs. They gave you a transparent mechanism to instantly file your cyber complaint with MHA, and the MHA was forwarding those complaints. From one last year, I think MHA took a further innovative, drastic step to tackle cybercrime. They realized that most of the cyber criminals who were shipping off your money by doing OTP frauds or financial scams, they were immediately withdrawing money from those accounts where the money was taken. After the investigation or tracking these people, the money was never found. So MHA decided that you could immediately call 1930, inform about a cyber fraud, give basic details like bank account number which has been used to carry out the fraud or a Paytm wallet or a mobile number, and that money will be seized within 48 hours immediately. And they give you a 48-hour window to file the official police complaint, and by the time money will remain frozen so that you could get your money back in case the fraud has actually been proven. But the problem is that complaints have grown 5,000 times. There is not enough manpower to tackle those complaints. A helpline which was getting 500, 1,000 complaints a day today is getting more than 50,000 complaints. It is collapsing under the burden of number of cyber frauds which are increasing. So I think we'll have to find a different mechanism to tackle these frauds. I think one of the mechanism, the strongest mechanism, may be to bring in a common standard among G20 countries or other like-minded countries to carry out a standard of KYC so that no fraudster in these countries is able to use a fraudulent bank account or a wallet or get a fraudulent SIM on false verification or false information and carry out a fraud. And in case it happens, it should be immediately blocked, and these numbers cannot be allowed to operate in any of our friendly countries.
So we have seen, like, if you see these days, so many calls come posing them as a relative of yours and they have been duped. There were messages on social media, WhatsApp. Now there is also, we are hearing about trend that voice modulation is also happening using AI tools. How can one prevent themselves from these kind of AI tools?
See, it is an emerging threat and it is a very dangerous threat because, the voice brings in a lot of trust. When a threat actor is using voice modulation to defraud someone, I think there is an enormous amount of trust is able to, create and build to fraud people. I think not only the voice modulation, people have been using deepfake videos to make video calls. I mean, impersonating relatives staying in foreign countries. They've been able to fraud elderly people, and this is rising. So I think here there is one point which is a challenge of using the technology and detecting deepfake calls or voice modulation, which is a challenge which is unlikely to be met in next 2 3 years. But probably what we can do is to target at the backbone of these fraudsters. How are they able to obtain these fraudulent numbers which are used to carry out frauds? How does a person sitting in rural village in a state is able to obtain SIMs from Brazil and other countries without proper KYC, activate WhatsApp and carry out frauds? I think it is an equal responsibility of big tech countries to ensure that they do a proper KYC verification of these companies or these accounts. And once if a complaint is lodged in any country, then they have to do a stringent KYC check in wherever, irrespective of where this country, this number is purchased or operating from, or which the countries it is located currently. So I think the standardizing a KYC mechanism or maybe bringing in a biometric enabled KYC mechanism might help this problem to a bit. By the time we figure out a technology solution, tackle the challenge of voice modulation and deepfake videos.
You spoke about KYC and you spoke about technology. Can you just give me pointers which should be covered by G20 countries that can be taken up at global level?
I've always been a votary that our bank accounts and our mobile SIM cards has to be mandatorily be enabled by Aadhaar enabled KYC, so that a person is not able to use fraudulent documents, is not able to use fraudulent identities. You can still get a fake SIM card by giving some false documents. And there is a 48-hour window for KYC. And by the time a company figures out that KYC has been done on fraudulent documents, a person is able to activate his SIM on WhatsApp and then carry out fraud for next 6 months. So I think one of the mechanism will be that all countries should agree to have some sort of biometric enabled KYC for opening bank accounts and issuing SIM cards.
Thank you, Mr. Jiten Jain, for giving us the insight into the efforts that is being made through G20.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on G20 Conference on Crime and Security. The participants were Jiten Kumar Jain, cyber security expert, and Prasoon Srivastav, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on Air. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on Air Official.